So you've heard about this intuitive eating method, maybe in an anti-dieting social group or even on this channel, but you're still skeptical because you're wondering, how can I give in to all of my hunger cues and allow myself to eat all the foods that I've been denying myself, and somehow that is going to help me stop overeating? Well, let's talk about those worries today and the common criticisms of intuitive eating. Stay tuned throughout this video because I'm going to be debunking 6 common intuitive eating criticisms. On this channel, you'll learn the science behind why you overeat and take home tangible strategies that you can use to help improve your relationship with food and your body. If this sounds like just what you need, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell in the top right corner so you never miss a video. I publish new videos every Wednesday. I'm Meredith MacKenzie of Parallel Wellness. I'm a registered clinical counselor and intuitive eating coach. I've helped hundreds of women who are struggling with poor body image and loss of control with food so they can become more attuned to their body's hunger and fullness cues, make peace with food, and get body acceptance so they can finally move on with other parts of their lives. Now, the first intuitive eating criticism that I want to dig into and debunk is that intuitive eating is just another trendy diet. It's just one of those things, it's going to come and it's going to pass, and it doesn't have staying power, and it's not something that you should really trust because it's just trendy. And this couldn't be further from the truth, and I'm going to tell you why. First, intuitive eating is not a diet. If anything, it's an anti-diet. It's completely against having a prescriptive way of eating and moving and choosing what you're going to put in your body. It's very much getting back to the natural relationship that you have with your body and the needs that your body has and responding to those needs accordingly. Another important thing to know about this, and when you think about the word intuitive eating, is that intuitive eating, unfortunately, for Evelyn Treble and Elise Resch, who were the creators of the intuitive eating method, they weren't able to copyright this term. And what that means is that anybody can say intuitive eating, or I'm an intuitive eater, I'm eating intuitively, and they can use this word however they choose to do that. So when you go looking on the internet or looking for information about intuitive eating, you do have to be very careful because sometimes that information isn't accurate. It's not a true reflection of what intuitive eating is. And instead, it's somebody who recognizes that intuitive eating has merit and people are genuinely curious and the research is backing it to say that it does actually work for people. So because it has that backing, intuitive eating is a really attractive word for people to use within their programs that are actually diets, or for people to just make money. It's a marketing term. And so you have to be careful with, being critical of what it is that you're consuming online and truly understanding what intuitive eating is. If you're wanting to know more about intuitive eating and what the principles of intuitive eating are so that you are getting accurate information, I highly recommend Elise Resch and Evelyn Treble's book, Intuitive Eating, and I will provide a link for it in the description box down below for you to have a look for yourself. Another intuitive eating criticism that you might have come across is that when you eat intuitively, you will gain weight. And there are quite a few things that we need to kind of dig into and really understand about this criticism. First and foremost, intuitive eating as a methodology, as a philosophy, as something that people within the eating disorder community, use with their clients and wholeheartedly believe in, like myself, is that intuitive eating is a weight neutral approach. And what that means is that weight has no value within the intuitive eating community or the mindset of being an intuitive eater. Weight is, just another thing like saying you have brown hair or you have blonde hair, and we're not trying to change weight in any way. None of the 10 principles of intuitive eating are in any way aimed at focusing on weight, reducing weight, even saying, one weight is better than another. It's completely neutral to this. Beyond the fact that weight is not a true indicator of a person's health, regardless of what that weight is, and which is one of the main reasons that intuitive eating does not put emphasis or any real interest into a person's weight throughout the entire program. What the research has shown, and I've experienced this within my own practice working with clients, time and time again, is that when you focus on weight, or you have that intention, you have that desire, you have that drive to change your body shape and change your weight, and ultimately you want to be a lower weight to fit that thin ideal, it actually disrupts the whole process of intuitive eating. It's not possible to be going down the road of intuitive eating and really trying to repair your relationship with food and your body and giving yourself full permission if you simultaneously hold this goal that I am going to be thin one day, or I'm going to fit into the thin ideal, or I'm going to change how I am right now. It's almost one of those things where you have to accept where you currently are at, and doesn't mean that you're happy with it, but let go of that desire to change your weight and shape in order to make these other changes that intuitive eating will so wonderfully help you with. The other important thing to know about intuitive eating is that any professional that you work with and any person that you're talking to about intuitive eating is that no one can say, based on your biology and the way you respond to different things, whether or not you are a person who will gain or lose weight when you start becoming an intuitive eater. It's just not something that can be predicted because there are so many different variables. The other thing is that, and again, this is not at all an emphasis or promise of intuitive eating, is that all people respond to becoming an intuitive eater differently. There is the possibility, if you were quite restrictive in your diet and, maybe over exercising prior to becoming an intuitive eater, that you're going to gain weight because you were pushing your body to an extreme that just was not maintainable. And it was something that, your personal set point was going to be at a higher weight. On the other hand, if you are really struggling with binge eating and overeating, there is the possibility that your set point is lower than where you're currently at. And as an intuitive eater, it would lower as well. At the same time, when you become an intuitive eater, there are different phases. And I'm going to be doing a video on this in a couple of weeks because I think it's so valuable to understand the process of an intuitive eating, recovery. But in the beginning, you are giving yourself permission to eat foods that you've not given yourself permission to eat before. And it's just natural. It's the body's, kind of starvation mechanism of saying, I haven't been allowed to eat these things. I'm really worried that I'm never going to get them again. You got to get it while it's hot. You got to get it while it's available. And so your urge for having foods that you've denied yourself previously is going to be really, really high. So there is an increased chance, and a lot of people experience this, it's not uncommon, to gain weight in the beginning of your intuitive eating journey because that is part of that process. However, the urges will decrease. The tendency to eat these higher caloric foods or, these off-limit no-no foods is going to decrease. However, I think that can be something that could be quite shocking and scary and overwhelming for anybody who is undertaking intuitive eating. And this is why it becomes a criticism of intuitive eating. But it's one of those things where you're looking at such a small snippet of the experience of becoming an intuitive eater, this long journey, and it wouldn't be fair to judge this whole process when, this far down the line, you're going to have such a great result and you're going to feel so wonderful about yourself and so connected with your body and just, enjoying food and enjoying life, just to be judging it on this one time point. Another falsity that I've heard about intuitive eating is that intuitive eating is the same as mindful eating, because mindfulness has become, again, such a trendy, big buzzword. And mindfully eating is another thing that people really try to do. However, no, this is not the case. Yes, there are aspects of mindful eating within intuitive eating because you are being very present in the moment and you're tuning to the sensations of the food that you're eating and all of that sort of thing. However, it doesn't reverse. Mindful eating is not intuitive eating. There is this entire foundation of principles and philosophy of intuitive eating that really informs the kind of the way you go about becoming an intuitive eater. And I'll use the example of realistically, and I call this almost like using your powers for evil within the eating disorder world, that mindful eating can be used negatively. It can be used in a way that's not healthy and not good for your relationship with food in your body. Whereas intuitive eating really comes from that genuine intention of authentically connecting with what your body is needing and responding in a respectful way. And adding to that, intuitive eating is so much broader than just mindful eating. It is including 10 principles, which I did a video on this a few weeks ago, and I will provide a link to it right here where you can go and check that out. And so there's so much more to intuitive eating. Again, I'm going to mention Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribble's book, Intuitive Eating. Again, that link is in the description box down below. But if you're wanting to learn more about the whole, program of intuitive eating, that's a great place to start. Now, if I've missed something on this list and there's something that you're still skeptical about intuitive eating about, or you're wondering about, leave a comment in the comment section down below and please let me know what it is, because I would love to address it in a future video. Now, another big intuitive eating criticism is that if you allow yourself to eat everything, you won't eat healthfully. And like I said previously, yes, there is some truth to this in the beginning of the intuitive eating journey, right? If you have been denying yourself all types of foods that are, super tasty, super satisfying, and you have tons of cravings for them, when you begin your intuitive eating journey, it is very, very normal to have a period where the urges for these foods are incredibly strong and you're going to want to eat those things. And that's actually part of the repair process, because you need to make peace with food. You need to depower that food and learn to trust yourself again and trust the hunger and fullness cues that you have in order to make it to this other side of the intuitive eating journey. It's not something that you automatically do. So again, you're trying to relearn this process and it does take time. So in the beginning, yes, it's possible that you are going to not eat in the most healthful way. However, with time, and the more you give yourself permission to eat what it is that you're really craving and wanting and practice listening to your body, funny thing is, you don't want to eat all of those foods all the time. It's like if, and I said this to a client recently and they were like, actually, that sounds wonderful. However, me on the other side of my intuitive eating journey, I'm like, no, not for me. If I had to eat chocolate and you told me the only thing you're ever going to eat again is chocolate, I would not enjoy that. I might have a bit of chocolate, but it's not going to sustain me. It's not going to feel good in my body if I were to eat chocolate all day, every day. And I love flavor and I love variety. And so what that shows us is that when we give ourselves permission to eat all of those things, we actually are able to go back to that natural way of attuning to our body and make decisions for all of those other factors. It's not just about, making something off limits and then we really crave it, but it becomes about the satisfaction that we feel, the taste, the texture of food, the variety of food, how we're feeling at a specific time of day, what we want at different parts of the day changes. And so what you will find is over time, you will actually start craving those more nutrient dense foods, and you'll still have all those other things that you love, but it is a process and it does take time. Adding to this, another important part of this whole debate about, is intuitive eating helpful for your health? The important thing to know is that health is based on an average over time. So you might be really scared in the beginning of your intuitive eating journey that you're, overindulging or you're eating too much of these things that don't have a lot of nutrition. And sure, that's part of the process. But again, if we look at your entire lifetime, this is going to be just a snippet of it. And over time, when you average things out, you're more likely as an intuitive eater to eat a diverse, various, nutrient-rich diet than if you weren't an intuitive eater. Another intuitive eating criticism is that there are just some people who aren't able to attune to their bodies or to listen to their hunger and fullness cues. And this might be a criticism or a concern that you have because your experience with eating, throughout the time that you can remember, has been that you tend to lose control when you allow yourself to eat different foods. And I want you to kind of just recognize that this is actually one of the, ways that the diet culture misleads you to believe that, what you're eating and how you eat is a reflection of your willpower. And, if you're good enough or if you can, have that willpower or that strength to say no to certain foods. And the truth is, willpower has nothing to do with it. And so I want to take that kind of just off the table because that's where a lot of the guilt and the shame from overeating comes from, and help you recognize that it's just your biology. This is the way your body was designed, that if something is taken off the table, you're designed to seek it out and to want it and to access it. And so the fact that you still lose control with food, or you still find those foods and allow yourself to have them, even though you've told yourself they're off limits, is actually showing that your biology is working the way it's supposed to. And it's by no means a reflection of how much willpower you have. So, saying all that, it's really important to again recognize that becoming an intuitive eater is a process. It does take time. It is a lot of work. It's not easy. I'm not trying to say that this is going to be the easy route to having a better relationship with your body, but it is absolutely possible. And I really want to leave you with that sense of hope. And finally, another one of the huge intuitive eating criticisms that I hear is that you will become physically unhealthy if you allow yourself to eat all of these different foods, or if you don't focus on weight loss and you don't focus on changing and shifting your body. And I want to, just debunk this, and I'm going to be doing lots more videos on health at every size and the research on health at every size. But research shows that weight is only, a small factor in the determinants of health. And there are so many other more important factors that we have, more control over, or would actually improve our lives in such a greater way than just our weight. And some of those things include social connection. So the quality of the relationships that you have with people, how supported you feel, if you're able to have somebody to go to and turn to. Another is something called adverse childhood events. And this is something you probably have much less control over, unfortunately. But these are the negative experiences that you might have experienced in childhood. They could be traumatic events. They could be things like losing a loved one or frequent moves in your household. But these are things that really affect us to our core. And this level of stress can really impact us. Speaking of stress, lifelong stress and, working a lot and having high cortisol levels is a huge impact on our health and is much more impactful than weight. And research has actually shown that the pressures that we put on people in larger bodies to lose weight and to shift and change their bodies increases their stress to a level that is actually much more damaging on their health than the weight that they are trying to lose. Now, I also talked about how intuitive eating is actually associated with quite a few health benefits, such as lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, and that type of thing. And so if you'd want to learn more about that, I actually recorded a video on that specific topic last week. So I'm going to provide a link right here that you can click on and watch that video next. So what do you think? Today I've reviewed 6 common intuitive eating criticisms that you're likely to come across, and I hope in your mind really just debunked those for you. But do you have any other questions, anything that you feel like I'm missing? Leave a comment in the comment section down below and I'd be happy to address it in a future video. Now, I have a freebie for you to understand your eating style and how your habits might be impacting why you overeat. So if you're curious, click the link in the description box down below and you can take my free quiz. If you're now curious about intuitive eating and how becoming an intuitive eater can help you stop your personal binge eating cycle, I am excited to announce that the doors are officially open for enrollment for my signature program, One Body to Love. This is a small virtual group for women who struggle with emotional eating and overeating, and it includes a very heavy focus on intuitive eating throughout this program. So if you are interested, I invite you to click the link in the description box down below and book a call with me. Now, if you are catching this after our doors have closed, I invite you to put your name on the wait list to join a future cohort. If you found this video helpful, let me know by giving it a like and subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss any future videos when I publish every Wednesday. Now go ahead and share this video with a friend or a family member or anyone who you think would benefit from learning some of these criticisms of intuitive eating and having them debunked.